Good afternoon. It is May 28th, 2024. You're listening to a Little Column A, Little Column B, hosted by Will Lemonos and co-hosted by Zach Bishop. How are you doing today, buddy?
Swish, swish, swish. Get those brooms out. We are going back to the finals. Second time in 3 years. And boy, every game, well, pretty much every game in that Pacers series was close. Especially once Halliburton went down. I think everyone's thinking, hey, we're supposed to blow this team out. That's just not really what the Celtics do. But we were down pretty much every fourth quarter. And past years, maybe earlier in this season and in these playoffs, we would have tripped ourselves up. But every time, we absolutely locked them down on defense, especially yesterday. Pacers didn't score the last 3+ minutes of the game. And just any time that we really needed to stop, we just absolutely got it.
The defense is definitely part of it, locking down them, essentially not scoring, I think, for the last 3:45 of that game. Like, no other field goals, just completely locked down. In a game in which they were in control. What I want to spend a little bit of time before we just dive so deep into the Celtics is that we did sweep them. They did have an easier route there. They didn't have Halliburton. I want to talk up the Pacers because I actually think this is one of the most legendary offenses that's never going to get any credit ever. They scored a ton of points. They shot incredible percentages. They were able to stay in games they shouldn't have been able to stay in. I thought Siakam's post-ups were awesome, super efficient and effective. I thought McConnell and Toppins coming off the bench were just two hungry guys that, I think are only going to get better, and I think Nesmith will be better. I thought this was a really good offense. So I think everyone's being like, well, we just beat the Pacers and nobody cares because they also weren't supposed to be here and they weren't supposed to beat the teams they beat. But I think this was a good Indiana team. Am I crazy for thinking that? I mean, you had a good look at them. You watched, obviously, from a biased Celtics side for 4 games now.
It was interesting how Nembhard was able to step into the Halliburton role. It's nothing against Halliburton. I don't think you look at it and go, oh, system player, only because he plays within this team. But whatever they were doing, it was really working. And Nembhard, having not just a playoff career high, but anytime career high. I mean, he's an awfully young guy. I think they made that Siakam move at the deadline. I think going into it, I had said there's something I feel like with Al or just generally the team that we were just able to take care of Siakam, and I think he had. It's more than moments. It wasn't just moments. He had stretches, but I felt like down the stretch, it's like in Game 3, Drew was able to steal the ball from him. Just when he really needed to step up, I don't think he was quite up to the task. But it's always so tricky. You lose your best player. He goes down. We're not exactly sure in the second game with a hamstring injury, and then he's done. And it's just unfortunate. It's just there's been so many injuries, especially in the East these playoffs.
They were still an incredible offense. They scored a ton of points, regardless of what lineup was in, regardless of what injuries, what foul trouble was going on. It seemed like every game they managed to find some offense from somewhere. And it's just weird to me that the whole league, this team, I think, was first or second, and we were the other one in leading points for the year, isn't talked about like an exciting team at all. We talk about all these superstars, these stars and all that, but none of them score like the way Indiana does. None of them score as fast as Indiana does. And I think that was the exhausting part about this was no lead's really safe when they're just reckless on offense all the time. They're trying to come back.
They had no interest in slowing the ball down. And I think that might have been an issue in some of these fourth quarters. It was, we're trying to run and score as fast as possible all the time.
The closing is the obvious weakness. And it was exciting to see Boston finally capitalize off that, saying like, oh, this is what a team looks like when they don't know what to do at the end of the game. Why do we constantly look like that? We have multiple options, and it looked like we had multiple options over all 4 games. All tight, all easily could have been won by Indiana, all easily could have been lost by Boston. But we took care of business, and I liked the way we did it. The defense was great. I thought the execution at the end, like the pass to White in the corner, is just a great example of good ball movement. I thought we had some really good smart plays of like Drew just driving and hitting that lefty hook, just muscling his way over whoever's on him.
You could tell. It was one of those that you could see him driving in, knowing. I was like, he's going to pump fake. There's or some sort of hesitation, and I mean, I don't know if he's going to get an and one, but he's for sure getting fouled on this. You could just tell.
Big block after big block, whether from behind and off the backboard, just smashing blocks here and there. Jalen was great. he's going to walk away with the Eastern Conference MVP. I forget the title of it. Is this
Larry Bird.
This is the Larry one? All right, so Larry's.
Yep.
I believe Tatum got the last one when we went there. I think that was the first year they did the Bird.
Correct. Yep, you're correct.
I had no problem with Jalen getting it. It was really exciting. Like I said, I think he hit the biggest shot in the series, that corner three. I don't know what you were supposed to do against it, but no complaints. I mean, I feel like I'm hard on Jalen all the time, but this was what I expected. I don't think it didn't fall short. He didn't surpass anything. This is what they've been doing, right? Isn't that what we're supposed to be saying?
I think it's really impressive with Tatum leading the team in points, rebounds, and assists. And going to Jalen, I didn't think immediately like, oh, that's just crazy. I didn't realize only 9 people vote on it. I don't know who in the media votes on it, but it was 5 for Jalen, 4 for Tatum. So, it's close to a coin flip as you can get. But I think you're absolutely right that down the stretch of Game 4, he made the defensive plays and made the offensive plays, as well as the biggest shot in the series was that Game 1 3. I have no idea what Carlisle was doing. Before that, 10 seconds left, you could call a timeout and advance the ball, which seems to be the normal thing to do. And I don't know why he didn't call a timeout. I thought that was a real blunder, and he admitted it in the press conference later. But that game was over. That was a college ending. You have the ball up 3 with 10 seconds to go. All you have to do is inbounds the ball. You get fouled, even if you only make 1 free throw, which you're an NBA player. You should be making both of them, especially in this situation where you're passing the ball in. And turnover, and then Jalen just I still can't believe that he hit that 3, and I think he got fouled.
The odds of failing an inbound, though, are very unlikely. Like, that's not something that should happen. You're an NBA team. I understand it's not an ideal place to inbound, and it certainly isn't a slight advantage to the defense inbounding where they were rather than at midcourt, but this is something you should be able to get the job done. What I do want to give credit for is after Jalen hit this play, I believe they had like 3 seconds on the other end.
Yep.
Or which game was this? What was the game where they ran like the football play?
That was game 3.
The end of game 3, they have the ball. There's 3 seconds left. Everyone's lined up on the other side of the court. It looks like they're about to score on the wrong basket.
I was so confused when I saw it. It was everyone was on the wrong end, and you're watching the game, and then it took me a second to realize what they were doing. But yeah, it definitely looked like a football lineup.
It was everyone's on a go route, and a couple guys crossed over. What I didn't like about it is Siakam was kind of sold as the decoy in it, and I think that's the guy I would have preferred to have it. I mean, Nesmith gets a great look, and that's really what I'm bringing the play up.
They needed a 3. They were down 3 points.
Everyone getting on Carlisle for all this. It was like, well, look, that didn't work, but that's a great play. Like, that play could have saved everything right there.
I'd never seen that before in an NBA game.
So I thought that was good. It was good execution. They don't have the team with the guy you get the ball to at the end of the game, and they just get the shot off. As much offense as this team has, it's not isolation. It's not guys scoring off the dribble. So at the end of the games, when the other team knows you only need 3 points, we have to just hold you to 3, that's not to their advantage. So I thought drawing up a play like that was their best chance, and it was a good look. So I'm not going to hammer Carlisle for all of this. I mean, this team still made it to the Eastern Conference Finals. A couple of months ago, we thought they were going to miss the playoffs. It's
true.
Hooray for the midseason, and ever since then, it's been downhill. But, now we wrapped up the season. This is a pretty good season for them, right? Is this not an overachievement?
Oh, definitely an overachievement. If you want to nitpick it, you could say, well, the Knicks guys were all hurt, but I still think it's impressive, even with the Knicks being hurt, the way they were playing, to go into their building and have a absolute no-doubt game where you set the record for, playoff field goal percentage. There has to be some level of, hey, you're a little nervous. You're going somewhere else. That crowd tried their very best, and to still just be able to perform at that level is just still impressive, even if it was against a banged up Knicks team.
All right, we can talk some Celtics good stuff or the Celtics bad stuff. What are you going to go with here? It's going to be a lot of Celtics soccer for the next couple of bit here. Right? We only got two game, possibly 1 game left and 9 days off. So we're gonna milk this as much as you want.
I mean, in 1 week. I mean, it's a sweep. We took care of the team. Yeah, was definitely disappointed in that game 1, where we definitely should have lost, and just disappointed because we jumped out to a 12-0 lead. It looks like we were set, but I just liked especially after that first game, and then we kill them, in game two. But then the third and fourth, I mean, you and I, when we were watching that game on Saturday night, when we were down at the half, before I reached out to you, I was like, I'm confident. I think I want to bet. If it's plus money, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good about this team. I think the Pacers are kind of getting lucky. I think we're going to be able to get our act together. We were down like right around double digits. Like, we can erase this so fast. I get a hold of you. You don't get back to me right away. By the time you do, the odds actually get better for us because the Pacers come out, hit a bunch of shots, and I think we went down by 18. And I just don't know what it was. It was like, we're gonna win this game. And then last night, we were so close to just tipping the other way, but we stayed just within reach. And I feel like for a long time, I haven't had that down the stretch. We're gonna figure it out. A little bit of that Tom Brady. Tom Brady's getting the ball, 2 minutes to go, and we're down. Like, okay, we can make this happen. I'm confident this is going to happen.
I think we always get looks that give us encouragement on coming back. It's not like we're getting, oh man, we can't even get a shot off, or like we're losing because of turnovers. That's rarely the mistake. We're losing because we can't make a shot. So once eventually we get those same shots and they just go in, we're back in the game, and then suddenly we don't stop because we just have a steady offense with so many threats. We do a lot of things well, but I think it's time to nitpick a little bit here.
All right.
Sam Hauser, it's been great all year.
Oof.
Really has. It's been awesome.
He finally made
cold.
one last night.
Ice cold.
But...
You know what? I would have rather lost the game yesterday with him trying to make a shot. I didn't want to go into the finals with him literally missing every single shot this entire series. So I was happy to see one go in yesterday. But are you thinking we should adjust those minutes now, or are we're getting a reset? We're the long day off here. What's the solution here? Because we need this. Like, he's really not worth playing if he's not making the three.
I think he holds up okay on on the defensive end. Usually he's just way more of a weapon on offense, and clearly he's not the best defensive player. I think he tries hard, and but I do think in the finals he's going to be targeted more. But he's not playing a ton of minutes. It's low double digits, and I think he's going to figure it out. I don't think that there's anything. What I'm really hoping is that you have the rough games, and then the finals. Rather than going 1 for 5 in these other games, these 0 for 4 games, it's like all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, he got a 4 for 4 game, and it really helps propel us because the shots that he was taking, those are his shots. He takes guy running into his face, and I don't think maybe it's confidence. I saw midway through the game when he just back rimmed one. It wasn't like it was a good shot. Easily could have gone in. Jason Tatum made sure to go over, high five him, and so I think that he's got the support of the team. But I think that we are especially without Porzingis, we don't have this super deep bench and all these very fancy names. So I think he is going to have to play, and he's going to have to keep shooting because at the very least, it draws out people. Even if he's not hitting these shots, you can't leave him wide open. You still have to contest, and I think he still spaces the floor, and that helps out the other guys to be able to get to the rim.
Well, that fixes the bench essentially, is having him stretch everything out. Where it's like we can't really score the same way the starters can, but we can at least spread the defense out and make them work and think about certain things. I mean, that goes on to my kind of next nitpick here of the hot and cold of Al Horford. I mean, what does he get? 7 threes one of these games, and then I think he goes 0 for 8 another one. Like, he's playing too many minutes. We all know that, all right? Porzingis is supposed to be splitting these minutes with him. He's supposed to be nothing but gravy on top of everything, and we're relying on him way, way too much. But the defensive targeting between him is just so obvious at this point that I'd rather make a team work and think a little bit rather than saying, what do we need to do on offense? Oh, we need to get the mismatch, and Horford's always the guy. And we have these 4 other guys that are capable of doing everything and defending all these positions, and we're just bailing out the other team, letting them pick this off. And we're getting crushed on the rebounds anyway. So, I don't know what the advantage of having Horford is if he's not having a great game from 3. Now, if he's going to score 7 threes, there's no way you're going to be able to take this guy out, and you're going to know that when you play him. I mean, even though I don't want to let him shoot that many times, I do still want to give it a shot off the bench, and if he's got it, keep him in. There's clearly an advantage to it, but if he doesn't, I hate not having another option here. And Tillman, I think Tillman's turned into the Tillman turnover. It sounds like a Little Debbie dessert you could find somewhere. He just doesn't look comfortable out there. I don't think he has any chemistry with any of the players. It's too little time and not enough. I just don't see it. I see a lot more confidence in Brissett. I like what he's doing out there, but I'm worried about our bigs. I'm a little bit more confident than you that I think Porzingis is going to play in the finals, and that changes everything for all of this. If these guys are just playing half the minutes they're playing now, we're okay. Like that's great. But if they continue to have to play the minutes, and they're going to end up getting targeted by potentially Luka and Kyrie, I just think that's an obvious red flag that I don't know how we fix. But that's where I'm at with those. They're tiny nitpicks. We've won 4-0. We're having a great offseason. I hate to just hammer on Horford because he has been good. Like he hasn't been like you have to bench him. I'm not saying that.
He had some good games. He was awesome in the closeout game. Yeah, he was awesome in the closeout game against the Cavs, and in game 1 he was rough. But yeah, he's had other games where he's on fire, and there isn't really another option. I mean, last night he played 40 minutes, and we don't want to do that. But yeah, like you said, we have to space these minutes out. We have to figure it out, and I think that we're gonna have to continue because I'm just getting a bad feeling from the Porzingis stuff. There was the rumor that got floated at the very beginning of the series that he was going to try to target game 4. And then I think it was between like game 2 and 3. Some reporter talked to Porzingis and he said, I don't know where that information came from because that's not what I was expecting. I get that the game 1 of the finals isn't going to be for another week and a half, but I'm seeing a little bit of like the warm-ups that he's doing, and he doesn't look like a guy that's about to come back on the court.
I'm not getting that vibe. All the reports, which like you said, could all be nonsense. I'm trusting all of them based on nothing. They just sound. It sounds like he's almost ready. It sounds like if he had to go, he could.
I think that's that's what the purpose is. It's to make you and me. Hey, I don't know. Like the reports, it seems like any day now, and that way the other team is also going. All right, we got to figure out this Porzingis situation because it sure looks like he's coming back soon. And then every time it's, oh, he was so close. Oh yeah, almost. Yeah, he was warming up. And then game 3, he's questionable, and then he's never there. And we've known the Celtics inner circle is known since he went down. It's like, oh, he's like, there's like a 15% chance he's going to make it. And now you just know, like, yeah, well, we're going to keep running out the same story that he's right on the cusp. But I mean, we've been hearing, he's right on the cusp for a while now. So I'm concerned.
What I will say is even if he does come back, if Dallas does advance, they're currently up 3-0. They're going to play tonight against Minnesota. We'll talk about that next. I think Porzingis is just as much of a target as Al is. So all of the problems that I'm mentioning with Al, I think Porzingis provides a little bit more, especially if he's healthy on the shot blocking. But he's on an island out there at the three-point line with Luka and Kyrie, as is pretty much anybody who's taller than any of them. So the fact that him playing, I don't know, is quite the advantage against Dallas as it would be against, I think, Minnesota. Is there a scenario where maybe we're better off without him? Like, can I argue that? Is that like any hope at all?
I don't think so. Al is 38 years old, playing 40-plus minutes. Any amount of breaks, so he can be a little bit fresher, is going to be good. Kristaps, yes, coming off of an injury, but if he is healthy, and we have rested him for quite a long time now, so if it really is, those reports are all accurate, and he's ramping his way up, and let's say he's 80% of his normal self. He's taller, and he's younger than Al, and so I agree with you, but I think Luka and Kyrie are so good, such good playmakers. So especially Kyrie dribbling, Luka with his shot making. I mean, you're looking what they're doing to Gobert. Like you said, we'll get into that in more detail. So that's literally the reigning defensive player of the year. Like that's what he's known for, and he's struggling. So I think at a certain level, it's not on the individual players. I think in both the past 2 series, we on purpose have like used Al Horford as bait, almost like in the past years, we trick Joel Embiid into trying to post up Smart, and then he maybe scored once in a while, but it seemed like Smart got the better of him more frequently, and I think it's Donovan scared me more because he was taking threes when Siakam and Nembhard are going against him, and you're taking this contested mid-range 2. Yeah, they made a bunch of them, and for sure, other guys are going to make them, but we're going to be taking so many threes at the other end. If you keep doing that, even if you shoot at a high percentage, it's going to have to be really high, and these aren't easy shots. Al, is older, but he's contesting these shots. These aren't wide open. They're not leaving him in the dust. So I think if Porzingis is healthy, he's definitely gonna help us out. Even even if it's just he's coming off the bench and Al's playing 30 minutes, and maybe Porzingis can only go for 15. But I think any help is gonna be worth it, because then you get Brissett out, you get Tillman out. Maybe it is a little less of Hauser, but I think all of those guys are just minute eaters. Like, you gotta put them out there so the other guys can get rest.
Well, we'll see what Missoula does. I can't exactly say I have confidence in all of this. I guess I would kill him if he was experimenting with crazy things right now in the playoffs, but I just, we're up 3-0. There were certain times in a lot of that 4-0 sweep we just had where things weren't looking great, and it would have been like, maybe we just tweak something. Maybe just look at something a little different. I think he's a little too scared to do anything like that, but I liked having Brissett in there. I like having a lineup where we have 5 guys that can switch, and you really got to think about which guy you want to attack, because every one of them is ready for it. And in a world with Luka and Kyrie coming to Boston, because that's the other thing, we get home court advantage. We're hosting June 6th, regardless of who wins. They're coming to Boston. I wish we could be the team that had the defense to shut down the other team and not the team that has to outscore the other team. Like, I don't want to depend on the offense. But, man, with those two coming into town, I don't know how anyone's going to outscore those two. Should we get to those? Do you want to do anything else with the Celtics? A little Derek White, Drew talk?
Loved both of them. I thought earlier in the in the series, I thought Derek White had some just it was just a couple of just like bad streaks where he just just threw the ball like directly to the other team, just very uncharacteristic. And then of course, yesterday he's got, what was it, 5 steals and 3 blocks, and one of them is just a chase down block off of McConnell, just smacks it off the backboard. Drew, especially in that game 1 when we were not getting a lot of offensive firepower from Tatum, he stepped up, and just a reminder that, hey, it wasn't that long ago that this guy could carry an offense himself, and so when needed, he could do some things. I feel like his confidence has even almost gone up. I saw a couple of times early in the shot clock bringing the ball up, and just Pacers weren't respecting him, and he stepped right into a 3. But you mentioned Coach Mazzulla real quick. He is the youngest head coach to make the finals since 1969.
I don't think there's ever been a player or a coach, getting the job the way Joe got it. And like that's also, how it happened. That's how true. It happened. That's never happened since 19 whatever. Like, you go far back as eternity.
And in the 60s, that was Bill Russell. That was when he was a player coach. So this is basically the youngest head coach ever. And yes, his whole circumstances are weird, but I think it's always helpful to remember we can't use it as an excuse. But this dude is super young, and I think that he has improved. I think he's improved through these playoffs, and I think some of it is just you have to get the reps. And going against these these other coaches, Rick Carlisle's been around the league for a long time, and for sure they were a lesser team, and then they lost their best player. But I think that just checking off some of these boxes is just as helpful for Mazzulla as it was for Tatum and Brown 5 years ago.
Second row Joe, what are you gonna do without him?
It's out first row now.
Yeah,
calling timeouts. He did that tricky thing where he took Tatum out for one defensive play and then got the timeout to put him right back in there. I think he's got something. He's cooking something up, man.
Like that, I was happy he was able to gamble on some defensive lineup for a little bit there, where we just went super big. I think that was Tillman and Horford. Both came in, and we kind of played like a match zone. It was like, all right, let's just give him a different look. Let's just do something different, something they haven't seen. So I'll give him credit for that, but I don't think that's the strength of this team. I won't admit that. I can't. I don't feel that way.
What is making, is that something from the regular season, or is that something you've seen more recently in the playoffs?
This is a shy assumption that I always know what the right move is, and that I'm agreeing with all the good coaches and disagreeing with the bad ones. And the reality is I don't really have the answers. I just feel like I disagree with Mazzulla a lot more frequently about the timing, and then some of the rotations are hard. I mean, look, he's got an awesome hand here, right? He's being dealt like it was a poker hand. This is the best hand you could ever get. Like life is easy for him. We can talk about the other game about like
No, I meant more the defense more than Maz specifically.
I mean, I'm not afraid to go bigger with some weird lineups here and there. I would like to go more zone. I think that could really like slow down a Dallas bench or maybe even a Minnesota bench and just bait them into a whole bunch of threes, and then they take a whole bunch of bad shots. It's just you have to rebound after all that. But I think that's just put more pressure on those four main guys. Like I said, you got to be able to beat Brown, Tatum, Drew, or Derek White. And if you can't score on one of those guys, you're not going to get a bucket. You know, it's going to be really hard.
And that's where that's why I think we have the option that we can score with teams, or we can play defense with teams as well. Where we were, and this is not the advanced metrics, but the offensive or the opponent's points per game, we were fifth in the league. We were right between Orlando and Cleveland. So I don't think we're like the Pacers. We even joked about it. It's like they are all offense. They don't really have any interest in playing defense. I think that we are able to do both, and that's what makes us such a challenge. Like you listed off those guys. That's why I think zone is like a gadget play here and there, but we got the horses, man. Don't give them any outs of, you got zone. Okay, now we can get tricky. It's like, yeah, try to score on Jaylen Brown. Try to score on Derek White because he's gonna block you. He's gonna block you again and again.
Did you know Derek White leads the league in blocks for a guard?
For a guard, yeah. Second team all defense.
Somebody told me that. I forget who. I don't know. It said somebody. I listened to a podcast. I listened to a podcast. Who says it? Is he? Oh,
they keep reminding you just to make sure that you remember it, because he ended up with 8 steals and blocks, and I think the whole Pacers team might not have had that many.
It's something. I mean, it's everything you wanted out for all this. I look at the guys we could have traded for, and the way role players Derek White and role player Drew Holiday are just stepping in and doing stuff that I just don't know how you convince guys to do the stuff they're doing. Like they either just can't do it or aren't willing to do it or don't know how to do it. Like there's a skill set these two aren't getting credit for, and I don't know how to give them credit.
I think Drew has stepped up nicely. I think he was like a little banged up throughout the year, and wasn't exactly sure, but had higher expectations. The Derek White, that whole trade, I didn't love it at the time, and you talked me into it saying, because it wasn't even Derek White so much as like, oh no, we're giving up like multiple first round picks. This guy's on the Spurs team that's not very good, and you said, hey, this is what you do when you're a contender. Is you don't save your first round picks. They're no good to you anymore. They're not going to help the current team. And so kind of talked me into it, but it's far exceeded even my wildest expectations. He's fighting all of the time. I feel like he's not a complainer, where if he's going to complain to the ref, there's usually a reason. It's not just constant. It's like if everyone has like emotions, and sometimes you'll see maybe he looks over, but then he's like, no, back on defense. And that was a huge 3 in the corner last night. Ice in his veins. Love Derek White.
My favorite thing about both of them that I'm seeing more, especially in the close games that we saw in this Indiana series, once we get towards the end of the game and the whistle sort of slows down a little bit, the refs kind of swallow and let the physicality just go, these two take advantage of that more than everyone. Drew specifically, the second we're on like under a minute left and it's just, a scrappy whatever sort of game and anything's going to go, he's able to get away and just amp up to a whole nother level that just seems to sabotage the other team. I mean, the steal, I think, gets capitalized on that, but it was the ball pressure that led to the steal, which he almost fell over himself and then just got right back on it and jumped right back on him again. Because normally when you get shook like that, you don't go back and challenge. It's kind of like the dribbler taught you not to defend him that tight, and he just went right back at him and stole the ball and won the game.
Absolutely just took it from him. And last night he's the one that got the big offensive rebound. I mean, we were in good shape, but that for sure just absolutely put it to bed.
It just seems like when we get down to crunch time and you're allowed to get physical, and they just can't call every single call. They just won't. They will, but they can't. It's nice that we could just kind of like release the dogs. It's like these guys just go.
Look out.
And Yeah, look out, they will. All right, let's move on. Next game. The series is also a 3-0 at the moment. Dallas just taking care of business over Minnesota. I got to talk about some of the Minnesota woes, and I feel so embarrassed and bad about this of just kind of saying Minnesota, Denver, winner of this, lock it in. Like, no way. Like, no way anyone's going to do it. You know, Luka's going to try, but he just doesn't have it in him. I mean, the physicality, the defense, the size of all of this is just all gone wrong in every way. It's been bad Cat, bad Rudy, bad execution, bad fouls, bad shots. Ant has been fine. I think everyone's been like, well, he's been anointed too quick, as you're always kind of quick to bring up. But I think he's been fine. It's just the other guys haven't been what they've been as well. And I think to immediately expect him to just be a superstar, you know, do this Jalen Brunson 40 points a game thing every night is just an expectation he's not going to have this year. I think he might get there. He might even get there next year. He might even get there tonight. But I think to be relying on that every single series, it's just more of how much of a miracle it was against Denver, as well as how much of a better matchup it was for them. There's a little bit of a story update with the Lively neck sprain. I know they're in control, but I think him not being able to roll off the ball screen to be the playmaker is actually a really big problem for Dallas, because then it just puts all of the pressure where you could sell out on the ball screens on Kyrie and Luka and just blitz them and trap them and force Gafford to try to make a playmaking. And that didn't seem to be working super well, which also makes it even crazier that they won this game. So, I mean, what more could you say about Minnesota that I feel like I'm flip-flopped entirely than the last series? Like, should we buy into the Denver series, or should I buy into them essentially getting swept by Dallas?
I think that maybe the Dallas series was just, or excuse me, that the Denver series was just the right series for Karl Anthony Towns, because it sure seems like he's kind of reverting back to just ice cold, bad turnovers, bad mistakes. It just, I mean, he's fouling a little bit less, but just 0 for 8 from 3.
Do you think they're doing anything differently to defend Cat this series that they weren't doing? Because I don't see it. I think he's getting the same looks. He's just not making them.
Yeah, and that's where I think in the last series, he was like stepping up, but we've seen it for a long time that he's had struggles in the playoffs. So it almost like the Denver series was the exception to the rule rather than he was breaking out. But I think that's the problem, and I think part of it too is Luka is really good and seems to be taking it very personal against Gobert. When he put Gobert on skates, and this is not the first time this has happened to Gobert, I don't think this makes it so he's unplayable or anything like this. It's just that the size matchup is not ideal, but Luka went right at him and was talking crap to him right afterwards. It seems like, I don't know if there's a history there or what, but seemed to be taking it very personally.
And they give the guy a couple awards. Nobody ever gives him any credit for any of them, and then suddenly they could just go back at him. Now he's just created a target of himself. I mean, he didn't ask for Defensive Player of the Year. I don't think he's ever gone out flaunting it. He just keeps getting it because the numbers are stupid on him. He makes the other team's shots so much harder, and that might not look so great on an individual play where he gets cooked by the best player in the league from 30 feet.
Right? Like that's gonna happen to a lot of people. Has happened to a lot of people and will continue to happen to a lot of people.
Look, show me the team that's going to truthfully look into themselves and say, well, which center do we have on our team that can go defend that? Because you're going to have to be real honest with yourself, look in the mirror, and you're going to realize we don't have that guy. There isn't a guy that does that. This is next level stuff that Luka and Kyrie just get the job done. They look incredibly comfortable at the end of the game, which is just it's exhausting. It's like every time it's like, how are they going to find a way? And they just do. Some of the things I think aren't playing to Minnesota's benefit is if Karl Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert are going to constantly be in foul trouble, it screws up all of the rotation. And the Naz Reid bailout can only happen so many games. They still do get it sometimes, but I think that's throwing off the rotation at all to the point where they get to the end of the games and they don't even know whether to put Cat back in or not. And that's like, I think, another problem where if you're in foul trouble, you're throwing off the whole rotation. And it's going to throw off your actual game because you got to get taken out all these times. You just don't have to do all of that all the time, and I don't know who keeps forcing him to reach into all these fouls. It just seems fixable to me. And then that's the most frustrating thing about Cat. It seems like we can learn from this, and it's the same mistakes over and over again, and no knowledge has been gained. We're If anything, we've gone backwards. Is there
Do
any
you
hope
think
for them?
that? Do you think that Luka actually got an injury, or do you think he just kind of banged up the same amount as a normal player? Because remember that was kind of a storyline, and he's questionable for tonight. I'm assuming he plays, but he's questionable. Lively is doubtful, but it sounds like Maxi Kleber is going to come back.
Well, I don't know if he can do what Lively was doing. I mean, the Lively rebounding has been just insane. He's grabbing everything. The plays he's making off of the screen and roll of finding guys in the corner or just scoring himself or going to the free throw line. It's going to be tough to replace that, and it's crazy that just a rookie has been a key role to all of the success of this. Just the masterpiece of taking advantage of Kyrie and Luka.
Had the neck injury, and there's been talk of maybe it was possibly a concussion. But before he had to come out of this game, only playing 9 minutes, which was really not much. I don't think the averages are going to hold up, but he would have been like the first rookie to average a double-double in a conference final. It's like, I think it was like 3 other guys, and it was all like, oh yeah, I've heard of those guys.
Any chance for Minnesota tonight?
I think there's a chance for Minnesota tonight. I really hope that Minnesota wins tonight, then go back to their place and win again, because if this ends tonight, the finals, whenever this series ends, doesn't start until June 6th. Not this month, the following month, a week into the following month. That's going to be so much downtime. I don't know. Why does the NBA do this?
Why do they expect to have longer series? I don't know. They're supposed to move the dates of it all. I feel like it's a big scheduling thing. I feel like they need permission to do a whole bunch of new stuff for the town to get ready for the finals, and they don't know which town's going to be in, and now they know.
You could say the same thing about for second round of the playoffs for the conference finals that we're in right now. We don't know exactly when games are going to, how long series we're going to go or not.
There's definitely a difference in the Eastern Conference sort of media hub than the finals hub. I think they like having the media week. I think more media comes than they do to the other games, and perhaps more internationally. I just feel like they always set up more of a hub there, as well as I think they want guys to be a little bit more 100% than they were. I mean, they just went through a grueling season of 80-plus games with a whole bunch of playoffs, and I know they got rest and they're athletes and they're all in shape, but I think this is just the kind of the way it's always been, and I do think it'll end up being a better product. I think it's going to damage. Like, people are going to forget about this. Like, they're going to think the season's over now. This is going to be long enough.
It's a long break.
This isn't the football season where it's like it's every week and we're used to a couple days off. But
think about it. We've been having basketball for the past 8 nights. It's every other night.
I love the 8 o'clock, 8:30 start too. Can I just?
I believe I saw that is going. That's how it's going to be for the finals. Because it's either going to be kind of a middle of the country team, going against an East Coast team. So I'm pretty sure I saw that 8 and 8:30 both. Probably 8 in Boston, and then 8:30 on the road. So yeah, that's really it's definitely on the later side, but it's much easier to navigate than the 10:30 starts.
I told you after the game, I was like, I'm going to be an adult and go to bed now because I don't have to stay up for the next game because there isn't one. And I'm not sure I got enough credit for that. So I just
smart.
That was a good move, and I had the Celtics in 4. Never a doubt.
Never a doubt.
All right. Anything else? I think Minnesota will be. Actually, I think they're going to put up a hell of a game tonight. I just don't know if they're going to close this team out. I think we're going to see the same thing that's happened in the last 3 games, where they look like they're in control. They look like they can win the game, and at the end of the game, they just get stolen. Just take it away. All the soul's just going to disappear. I think it's good. I don't see how it's going to change. I don't know how they could fix it. How would you stop the Dallas offense? Like, now that we're going a little bit more forward, potentially with Boston facing them, like, what would you do? Like, what did Minnesota not do that you think another team's going to do?
I mean, it's almost like the when they were playing Denver, how just like they were just like they almost like ruined Denver's will to like play basketball. Jamal Murray was so frustrated, and like the whole team just seemed like in shock. And I it's not just effort, but is there some sort of equivalent that they're able to just go out there? And maybe it's just that you know, Luka and Kyrie have been around longer, or I guess Luka hasn't been around longer, but I don't know, the European style and just or maybe he gets more of the calls, but I think that you really have to focus on those guys. I think you gotta discourage PJ from being in the corner. He has just shot super well, and I just don't know, is this something that's going to continue, or is he just on an absolute heater right now? It's going to fall off a cliff at some point. But I think that you really have to, and it's hard because they're both really good. Of how do you get them out of their comfort zone and get them to be passing to somebody else and say, all right, it might be 4-on-3 now, but let me pick it. You Derek Jones Jr. You make a play. Let's see what happens.
That's what I would hope for. But I think that's what Minnesota's been hoping for. And PJ and Jones Jr. just keep hitting threes in the corner like it's all day.
Yeah.
I think you want to be more physical with Luka and Kyrie, but I think they're really good at getting foul calls too. And it's not even just the bickering, which trust me, that's going to exhaust all of us. If you haven't seen Luka play yet, it's going to be a wake-up call of like, wait a minute, everyone thinks this is the best player in the world, and he's going to be like this after every single shot. It's like, yeah, well,
every single play.
But I do think he's still good at getting fouls, even with that kind of negative attitude. I don't really appreciate it entertaining-wise. It's just not fun to watch, but they're good at that. So I think, and also if you're passive on them, if you're not on them, they're just going to shoot threes from as far back as they need to. If you give them open looks, if you don't pressure them into anything, they're going to cook you anyway. So I think we're going to go back and forth between going really physical with them and then guys getting in foul trouble and be like, well, I don't know if that worked. And then being passive with them and then be like, well, they still scored. Like they just walked up and took a three. One advantage I think Boston will have is the pace of all of this. We can kind of, I think, go back and forth. I think Dallas can play fast, but chooses to play slow. At least that generally benefits them more than the other team and kind of lures them to sleep, and that they just can't hold on. But I think we can also crank up the pace a little bit on this and just force them to be a little bit more reliant on them making plays faster and have to keep up with more scoring. I don't have a good answer, though. I really don't.
I think it does help that I had mentioned this a little last week when you said, who would I prefer to play? And I said, I think it's Dallas, just with, Luka, he's big, but, more and more of a wing, and Kyrie definitely a guard. And that's what we got guys that we can throw at, where I was thinking, if we're dealing with Rudy in the paint and Cat, even with his struggles like that's a big team. But I think that we could put Brown, Tatum, I think we can keep throwing guys at Luka and Kyrie, where I'm not sure. I think we're going to be better off than the Wolves are going against them.
Okay, I have already going to say right now, I'm not going to have any shame in losing to this Dallas team if those two are going to be playing the way they're playing. I would have felt kind of bad losing to Minnesota, where they just hammer us with all the bigs. It's like I said, the one weakness we have, and they just have a masterful amount of. They have so many bigs that could do a variety of stuff in between, and we just don't have that. So it would just suck to watch their strength go against our one weakness and come out unsuccessful. So I'm happy to not have to hopefully see that, but we'll see. Luka misses a couple games here. I mean, if one of these guys gets hurt, they're toast. They don't have any depth. I mean, if Luka and Kyrie goes down, they can't do it on their own, right? I
mean, even without Lively.
I think that's
Lively's
a big
been
loss.
huge. I mean, he's been coming off the bench, but he comes off the bench and then plays more than Gafford does. And it seems like they've gotten very lucky on PJ and Derek Jones Jr. coming out of nowhere and just being like these elite 3-point shooters. And it seems like it's balanced nicely, where when one of them's off, the other one's on. And just now with a week and a half, does Mazzulla have something that, as he's maybe becoming a budding superstar and able to figure out, okay, this is what we're gonna do. This is what they weren't doing, and somehow flush them out of the corner, or whatever it is, but actually come up with, hey, here's the game plan. Here's what we're gonna do to use our talent against them. And it's not just we have the better players; it's that we also have a better scheme, and we're gonna use that to our advantage.
Well, we'll be back next week to know who the Celtics are going to be facing, but we won't have a game until June 6th. So podcast suffering for, I don't know, we'll come up with some sort of gimmick next week. I don't know if we could do a super early mock draft of NBA, or I don't even know. We will figure out something. Maybe some news will come up and Kyrie will go crazy over the next week, and that'll just give us everything we want. An implosion in Dallas and a storyline out of Kyrie.
Fingers crossed.
Moving on, All NBA came out. First team, second team, third team. Do we want to pick some nits? Are we okay with this? Who do you want to go at? Who do you want to take off, and who do you want to put on? Or are we all okay? Because we don't need to make this a big deal if it's not. It already happened too. There's no going back. We're not revoting.
First, high level. The Suns got two guys, and the Lakers got two guys. Both those teams, play-in teams, basically, that were out pretty much immediately. And it just kind of gotta scratch your head at that a little bit, as you look into it a little deeper. And so I think that's my that's the easiest one for me to make the decision on. Is you take Devin Booker off and you put Jaylen Brown in.
Oh, that's the one you would do. I actually,
yeah.
I agree with that they just didn't have that great of a regular season, even if they were still proven to be good players. I thought, you had the best record by like 18 games over every other team in the league. That maybe you should have two guys in the top 15, just maybe. But I wouldn't have taken those guys. I think I would have looked more at Sabonis or Halliburton, then LeBron, then Booker. In that order, I probably would have had Brown above any of those guys. I have a hard time taking LeBron off. He still does a lot out there. I know it's not the same, but I thought Halliburton was just on such a decline the rest of the second half of the year. And Sabonis, I'm not even sure he's the best player on his team, let alone how good was that team by the end of the year too. I think that those are the guys I might have looked up the other way about. But overall, it's a really good league. Look at the amount of players across the board that are on teams that are still playing and teams that aren't still playing. It's a good league. It shouldn't be easy to get into this. We should be having conversations like we're having where I think this, you think that, and everyone's kind of like, well, we got like 20 guys for 15 spots. So I think we're in a good spot.
One thing, and like you said, the Kings fell off a little bit this year, and them being on the West Coast. But just something to point out: Sabonis played every game, so I don't think that is the end all be all. But I think if you're kind of putting guys like against each other, I think if you played every game, that can kind of just notch you just a little bit ahead, because I think availability, that's important.
Could Curry drop any farther? The third team?
I mean, what happens next year if they slip even a little bit more and they're not even a play-in team?
I just don't think you can keep them in the top 15. I think this was the last year where they were holding on by a thread, and it was almost entirely because of him. I think next year if they struggle even more, even if he is similar to what he was this year, I don't think you can keep him on this list. I mean, even AD played a ton of games this year, so like normally it feels like, all right, we shouldn't have two Lakers because one of them missed the whole year. But they played. It wasn't the most successful year, but they played. So I don't know. I just don't think the Warriors are very good this year. There was a lot of other good teams out there. It's a weird conversation to be like, yeah, I think Curry wasn't good this year. It's like, I don't know. If he's so good, don't you think the team should be better? Should that be the case with all these guys?
I wanted to nitpick Kawhi a little bit more, but I think that was really more to do with the playoffs and not really playing in the playoffs. And this is there's a regular season award. How many games do you think he played in the regular season?
66.
68. So I can't remember what the what the baseline was, but that's pretty reasonable. That's pretty much right around what all these guys are playing, except for like Sabonis is playing every game, but that's pretty unusual.
Well, it's the first year where we had the positionless stuff, and we had a minimum of 65 games, as well as you got to play a certain amount of minutes in some games. There's a couple other qualifications, but this is the first year I believe we were enforcing those sort of standards, and this is what we got. So I hope everyone's happy.
I think the only one that it could have possibly impacted would have been Embiid. He's the only one that came in low on the numbers.
You know what
I
though?
don't think Donovan Mitchell would have cracked.
If Embiid,
But Embiid only played 39 games. So if he had played more games, it wouldn't have mattered. If it's not this like number. It's this guy was only available for half the year. So I'd rather have a guy that's a little bit worse than him, but was available the whole year.
I 100% agree. I also will just say, based on the games that he did play this year, if he'd played the 65, I think he would have won MVP. I really think he would have. So.
If he kept up at that level, it would have been hard to say no.
All right, All NBA, wrap that up. All set there. Some not so happy news. Let's transition into the passing of Bill Walton, a sports announcer, a pop culture personality, the father of Luke Walton, and most and foremost, a phenomenal basketball player, UCLA legend, Celtics legend, NBA legend, just a really, really good player and an exciting personality that I think we might have mocked in certain times, and at other times, I think when we needed a laugh, he was kind of there to give it to us, willing to do whatever ridiculous bit it would take to kind of get a smile off of who knows what. Sometimes you scratch your head a little bit on it, be a little too left field, but that was Bill Walton. I encourage anybody, if you haven't, go look up some YouTube videos of him actually playing, because I think he's going to be remembered more for his announcing and his personality. But he was a really, really good basketball player, and it's too bad to lose him. I didn't even know he was sick. I think that's the sadder part about all this, is a little bit more sudden of that. But yeah, Bill Walton. You got anything for Bill?
Just want to add, he was an MVP, was a two-time NBA champion, as well as two-time UCLA champion, and I knew that he was just phenomenal. I mean, three-time player of the year, national player of the year in college. It just that's tough to beat. There's not a lot of three times on that list. But in the national championship game against Memphis State, he went 21 for 22 with 44 points. Can you imagine in today's game if a guy missed one shot in a national championship game? I can't even picture it. Same with you. They came out of nowhere yesterday. It's a holiday, kind of just getting ready to watch the Celtics, and really just came out of nowhere. So he'd been dealing with cancer for a while. It just, man, the guy's body just really let him down. I heard some crazy number earlier today. I was listening to a lot of interviews with him, a lot of people talking about him, just crazy amount of surgeries. It just a guy that loved basketball, and I'm really drawn to those types of guys where he's doing the announcing, and if he is doing your game, it can drive you absolutely crazy because especially if your team's losing, you want him to take it seriously, and you have no idea where he is off, like you said, in right field talking about who knows what. But he is having a great time. Multiple people I heard today talking about him, saying, one of one. Wasn't afraid to speak his mind. Just super nice to everyone that he met. And I even listened to when the Part of My Take guys interviewed him. I think it was 2017, and similar. I can't remember if it was Simmons or Rosillo or one of the other big guys. Where normally there's a little bit of chit chat at the beginning. You kind of dive into it. There's back and forth with Bill. Sometimes I don't even know if they asked a question. I think it might have just been like, "Hey, Bill, thanks for coming," and then he just goes, and then he's just going on his own tangent. And if you want to keep up with him, cool. But you don't even need to have prepared questions about asking about this and this. He is going to go whatever direction he wants to go in. And I think that if a lot of other people did that, it would feel rude, or it'd feel like, man, this guy just wants to hear himself talk. But it just the whole time he is just excited, and it just seems like a very he was a very nice guy. And, part of the NBA 50 team, part of the NBA 75 team, and definitely somebody that, is going to be very missed throughout the NBA.
Just authentic is really how you could say about him. I mean, that's kind of why he was able to get away with the tangents and I mean, he'd be calling a game, and then there'd be 2 minutes left of the game, and suddenly he'd tell you some story about how the Hawaiian shirt he got from some fan, and then the fan has got some trauma or some tragic stories. Like, where are we going with this? It's like we have 2 minutes of this game, and we're talking about a T-shirt and how you got it at somebody fan at the airport gave it to you. It's like, what? How did we get so far off of all this? But that's who he was. That's the authenticity of that who he was. He was, I think, always had a smile on his face, at least always trying to put a smile on other people's face, and that's how I'll definitely remember him. But a large fellow, though. I don't think that's being talked about enough of how physically big he actually was. A massive human being. All right, wrap that up. We got some college update. And it's not just a sports update. It's a little business. Little Power 5 schools have now agreed to allow schools to pay players. And I've noticed the specific wording of all this is now they are players. I do not see student athlete anywhere because I don't think this qualifies as student athlete anymore. This is now a professional system, is it not?
Amateurism is dead, at least at the college level, at least at the high college level. This surprised me. I knew that it was in the mix, but it just seems like all of like the amateurism that has been around for ever in college, like in the past 3 years. I mean, 3 years ago, and this, remember, 3 years ago, that is post-pandemic. If you, were an athlete and you signed your autograph and someone gave you money for it, that was a big problem. That was a really big problem. If that got found out, you are in trouble. If you're still in college, if you've already left for the NBA, it means your school's in trouble. You might lose scholarships. You might have to vacate wins, all sorts of things. And just in this very brief amount of time, we've gone from that to NIL. We've gone to NIL collectives. And now it's starting next year, full on. Your school, if you're an athlete, will be cutting you a check to play whatever sport that you were at that school for. It's just wild how quickly this has changed. And this is not the NCAA realized, hey, this isn't really fair. We've been making money off of these players for 100 years, and they're the ones that actually perform. They should probably get a cut of this. No, this all started with Steve O'Bannon years ago, and he has been working at it, and lawyers and lawsuits, and basically they got the NCAA up against the wall and said, hey, this is it has to do with antitrust, has to do with all sorts of legal stuff that I still don't fully comprehend. This was the NCAA realizing if we don't bow down to this, we're gonna get shut down. We're gonna get shut down by the courts, and we're not gonna make any money. So this was not a good deed done by the NCAA. This was, they keep getting their butts kicked in court, and this is what it's come to.
It's the end of an era. It is a big change in everything. Do you need an agent to negotiate in all of these? Is it just a player? Are you allowed to have an agent now? There's so many financial things that I think are just taken care of step by step in the professionals that you need to build an entire system. Do we have anybody keeping an eye on all this? Is anybody in charge of making sure this all follows at least some sort of procedure? I have a million of questions, as well as every vulnerability they've always said that we can't do this because of this might come back and actually happen. And I mean, kids are going to have a stupid amount of money in college, as well as, like, why would you ever go to another school where you can't make this money, right? Like, aren't you just competing for these schools? Like, is this not a huge monopoly to some degree?
Well, it is the Power 5 schools, so they were getting all the best players anyway. That's where the money is to begin with.
Competitive just got more competitive.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And so I agree there's still going to be a bunch to shake out. Actually, part of this was a $2.7 billion settlement that will be going back 10 years. So if you played college in 2016 or forward, you are likely to be getting part of this money. And there's been some questions from guys that maybe didn't play quite into 2016 that are saying, hey, wait a minute here. How come it's only to 2016 that these guys, were hurt by this system? What about the guys in, the 2000s, the 90s, the 80s, all the way back? But I don't know how that all works. But I've kind of been surprised. I don't know if it's because this came out kind of right before the long weekend, and everybody had yesterday off, but I feel like I have not heard a lot of discussion about this, and maybe because it's still so new and it really doesn't get implemented for another year. But I am interested to find out, hey, how does this work? I think it said something about 20 million per school, but is it weighted towards the more money making programs? Is it just split right down the middle? If you're an athlete on a D1 program, you get a piece of it each year.
Is it
how does
evenly
this
split?
impact?
Like, is
That's
each
what I
player?
don't know. Yeah, that's what I don't know. Is it is it evenly split per team? Is the will the NIL collectives be separate like from this, or will like the NIL collectives almost like feed this? But so
What
I don't want to make too many judgment calls. I think it's a step in the right direction. I hope that the whole thing doesn't fall apart. You talk about the Power Five. That includes the Pac-12. Pac-12 is already gone, so that's a portion of it. But I think in the coming weeks, and definitely before football starts in the fall. Well, actually, no. I guess because it doesn't start till next year. But over the next 6 months or so, we're definitely going to be getting more information on how this all works. And you were concerned about compliance. I think the colleges already have compliance groups in place. I think this is almost like the gambling. It's like, oh no, like gambling, like that's no good. It's like, well, until people are making a ton of money off of it, and it kind of just brings everything into the light. So if there is weird stuff happening, there's stuff set in place, and it's not all kind of behind closed doors and in back rooms.
Are they still doing scholarships? Are they still going to school? Or is this purely a business transaction where you are paying me to play for this team, even though this team is at this school, and I don't need to attend this school at all? I just need to show up for my job now.
I would have to imagine that could be by school.
Or
because
you got to pay your own way in now. I'm paying you. Go ahead. You could pay for your school. Like, you have a job. You have a better job than most people that age.
I'm sure that'll be part of it. Of all right, you get a scholarship. Here's the money. You get on top of that. That'll be fine. But I mean, it is not unusual right now that the top guys that are going to the NBA. You make sure you're passing your classes for the fall semester, and then you're not going to classes in the spring semester. So that was already something that was kind of happening. But that's at such the elite level. I mean, that's like a tiny percent of the elite guys. I mean, what is there? 5 of those guys a year, maybe. And I think it might just be by school that they say, hey, here's the grade point average that you have to keep. But I'm sure that'll have to be reviewed.
My next thing, and there's no way you're going to know the answer to this because I don't even entirely understand it in the NFL. But like, if you get injured, the money's not there anymore. Like, you got to have a real special contract for some guaranteed money. Guys get injured all the time, and I thought one of the things in college was they'd always have a next guy up, and what happens to that guy's money now? Like, are we all like, is that gone now? Or does the next guy that steps up, does he get more? Or was he not getting?
Yeah,
what do we? Because
that's what I'm. Yeah,
in the NFL,
that's what I'm not sure about.
They have that all figured out.
But the good thing would be the guy that got hurt would have some money, where under the old system he would have no money, and in college those scholarships are year to year. So if you get hurt and you're not going to be playing for that team the following year, it's not, oh yeah, well, you worked hard, this wasn't your fault. Now you have like medical problems, no money, and no more scholarship. So that's why I think this is still a step in the right direction. But yeah, I don't know how the minutia of it is going to work. And I think that's going to go more what I was talking about before, saying, how does this get split up? Is this between all of the athletes? Is this between more for the football team because the football team brings in the most money? How does this work?
All right, last one. It's not going to take long, and if it hasn't happened already, it will happen almost immediately. Who's the first player that says, I don't want to play for this team anymore. I don't care how much money you're paying me. I want to be traded to somewhere else, or I want to quit, or I want out. And then what happens to that? Because once the season starts, I mean, there's no more movement anymore, to my understanding. Is there now movement?
You have to wait till the offseason to transfer.
Do you not see this possibly happening? Of them just being like, all right, I took my first whatever guaranteed 1,000 and I'm out the rest of the year. Like, I don't like this team. I don't like this coach, or I didn't get along with the teammates, or, I might just actually not be that good. And that I don't want to prove that either.
I could see that happening. I just wonder if maybe that's when they do the split. The split has to do with how much you're playing. So rather than the NIL deal, which seems a little more of a a lump sum, like here ka-chunk, it might be okay. You played the first 2 weeks and then you said you didn't like it here. Well, now you are not fulfilling your side of the the quote contract here, and yeah, then maybe you're not getting
Look,
maybe those checks aren't coming in anymore.
It all sounds great on paper and in theory of like, yeah, well, we got a contract. This guy will never ask for a trade. But I just hear the player empowerment of every other sport in professional sports now just talking about like, hey, this guy has a contract. Durant had a contract for 5 years. He asked for a trade, and he got it. I mean, I'm not saying that every college guy is going to have the same, weight of throwing around of saying like, I'm Kevin Durant. But, these are scenarios I think are just very predictable. And while I do think this is all a step in the right direction and that these players are deserving of all this, I just think that there's so many problems that have already been solved in another league that they're just going to slowly either figure out or run into, because this isn't going to be as smooth. That was the big problem, I think, with all of this was how do you come up with a system, and then how do you enforce it, and then how does it even work? There's so much here.
And I think the NCAA had decades to figure this out, and they said, no, we want to hold on to as much money as we can. We're going to say all those things that you just mentioned, like, oh, nah, there's no way we could figure this out. You really want to give a 19-year-old millions of dollars? That's crazy talk. And then the lawyers came in and said, hey, this is not fair what you're doing. This is illegal, and we're taking you to court. And even with the NIL stuff, they had time, and then they kind of panicked, and then they hoped that the Supreme Court was going to bail them out, and then the Supreme Court didn't. Said, guys, this is your thing. You figure it out. So I think they're lucky at this point that some sort of other organization hasn't come in and just taken over with how badly they've mismanaged this.
I don't think we're that far off of somebody just saying, we need a commissioner. It's going to be X. We nominate someone. I'm not saying Adam Silver is going to be leaving his job, but if you could get a guy like that, I think that's what you need at this point. I think there needs to be a face to all of this to some degree, and it's just there's a whole lot here. There's too much to unpack in just a podcast. So there's going to be more details as we come. Maybe we could do more time on this next week. We'll be back next Monday, I believe. We'll hopefully know who the Celtics will be playing by then, and then we'll do a huge preview and some sort of gimmick of some sort, because we're just not going to have any basketball games for quite some time right now. This is the off season for the off season. But make sure you subscribe. Little Column A, Little Column B. Find us on YouTube, Spotify, wherever else you get your podcast. You can follow Zach on his X account, which is
Wicked Z-Man 24.
Anything for the people out there.
Finals, baby. Let's go.
4 wins away. I'm just happy we made it. I feel like it's not a disappointment of a season, all the moves we made. We got to where we got. This is the time where we actually test the test and get to see if any of it was worth it. But we got this far. We didn't blow it. Right? Like I just feel relieved by that.
Finals. Now it's just time to get it done.
All right, Tommy points for everybody. We'll be back next Monday.
Giving you a Tommy point.